GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Life Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 150. You hear that silence? John's not here today. Episode 115. Buffalo Bills versus Green Bay Packers. I'm joined by co-host, friend of the pod, co-host of the Sabercast, Brayton Wilson, at BJ Wilson on Twitter. Did you change your Twitter handle? I just remember that as I started saying
I
it.
did, yes. I changed it up. It's at Brayton J. Wilson now.
Thank you. At Brayton J. Wilson. You can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, wherever else you listen to podcasts. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcasts. As mentioned, Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe LTD, Brayton at Brayton J. Wilson on Twitter. Brayton, thank you for joining the podcast tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Bills keep winning. Sabres are winning as well. And it's a good time to be a Buffalo sports fan, and hopefully we keep it rolling.
I know that this is a Buffalo Bills podcast, but Tage Thompson getting 11 points in 3 games, pretty damn good way to start the podcast off.
Absolutely. I mean, Tage Thompson is just, there's a reason he's called TNT. He's just an explosive player.
Hell yeah. And he's a lot of fun to watch. So, hey, the Buffalo Bills, they coast to a 27-17 victory over the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. It's the 4th straight win for the Buffalo Bills and their best start since 1993, where they started 7-1, finished 12-4. It is the 6th consecutive regular season win at home, the longest home win streak, since a 6-game streak in 1998. Buffalo is also 9-5 against Green Bay all time, including, get this, 7-0 in home games against the Packers. Buffalo also snapped Aaron Rodgers' 13-game primetime win streak, which was the longest streak of that nature in the National Football League since 1970. So, Brayton, before we get started here, I mentioned the Bills coasting to a victory. And it's weird. It's something that we're going to talk about here in just a second in our offensive, our first of the 3 big things, I should say, running down the offensive stats. But Sunday's game wasn't really, I don't know, it didn't really raise the blood pressure like the games normally do, like the excitement. It just didn't seem like it was there.
Well, I mean, it was there for the first half. I mean, right off the bat, you get a 3-and-out, and it's just like, oh, that was not the great way to start against a Packers team that's desperately trying to look for a win. But then all of a sudden, they get a defensive stop on a 4th down, a turnover on downs, and they're turning it back the other way and turning that into a touchdown. And they get out to a 24-7 lead at halftime, and you think, oh, man, it's going to be a nice blowout. We don't have anything to worry about in the second half. Then the second half comes, and Josh Allen goes from his 2022 version of Josh Allen back to 2018 version of Josh Allen for a couple of series. And it's just like, what? Why would you make a throw like that? Why would you make a decision like that? Either chuck the ball into the bleachers or run out of bounds, or, I mean, even at that point, go run for a first down or go run for a touchdown like he had the opportunity to. It was just a couple of baffling decisions that Josh Allen made, and he admitted it in the postgame himself. He just said, those were dumb mistakes that kind of eat at me, and, we got to work ways to figure that out despite winning a football game that, was a good win for the Bills. They get a win over a Packers team that's desperate for a win. They didn't get it. They're going up against the 2-time reigning NFL MVP, who's also won 4 NFL MVPs in his career. So it certainly was a good win. Yes, it wasn't exactly the nice coasting victory that I think a lot of Bills fans were expecting it to be in the second half, but certainly it did not feel great all the way through the game, though. That second half, there were a couple of points where I was sitting in the press box just thinking, like, they should have closed this game out already, and what are they doing? Just continuing to leave the door open for the Packers. The Packers aren't exactly the same team they were.
I agree with that. And that really does bring us into our three big things, which are brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your NHL sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just interrupt? Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. And Brayton, to pick up where you left off, running down the offensive stats, quarterback Josh Allen, 13 of 25, passing 218 yards with 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 6 rushes for 49 yards. Now, the good here, 19 touchdown passes in his first 7 games of the season sets a new franchise record previously set by Josh Allen himself in 2020, where he had 17 touchdowns. Allen leads the NFL in total yards with 2,504 and total touchdowns with 21. With the win on Sunday, Josh Allen became the first quarterback to lead his team to wins against 3 MVP winning quarterbacks in 1 calendar month since Miami quarterback David Woodley did it in September of 1981. Now, looking at those interceptions that you were talking about, Brayton, both of those clearly were ones he wanted back. You mentioned that. He mentioned it in the postgame as well. The first interception was an across-the-body throw, which was essentially Josh Allen trying to hero ball it, which is what Josh Allen used to do. And the second interception, we know the arm Allen has. He could have easily thrown that away, thrown it into the 5th or 6th row of the stands if he wanted to, but instead he tried to kind of fit it in a hole that was just not there, and it was obviously scooped before it hit the turf. So here's the thing I think, though, is that Buffalo really appeared, and this is something we saw before the game, a lot of jawing between each other. Jair Alexander from the Packers, Stephon Diggs from the Bills, obviously. They were going back and forth at each other. To me, it seemed like as the game went on and the Bills knew the game was in hand and that Green Bay wasn't going to be able to match what Buffalo was doing, the game turned from being Buffalo versus Green Bay to Buffalo's offense versus Green Bay's cornerbacks in the second half, which did not appear to be a logical plan because we see that cross-body throw from Josh Allen. Again, you're trying to do too much. Or the one where he threw it into the ground and it was picked up for an interception. You're trying to do too much. And I think that's a moment where the Buffalo Bills can grow and say, look, teams are going to talk trash. Teams are going to try to get in the Bills' head because that's how you can defeat teams that are much better than you are, is you have to disrupt the flow. And that's what it seems like the Green Bay cornerbacks, despite losing on Sunday, they were able to interrupt the offensive flow that the Buffalo Bills had going on Sunday night.
Absolutely. And, the Bills, they could have easily just run the clock out. They easily could have just handed the ball off to whoever was in the backfield, and they could have not even let Josh Allen throw the ball anymore, which, obviously that doesn't make for fun football. But at the same point, the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, had zero answer in terms of how to move the ball efficiently other than just running the ball on the Bills. And that worked after a while. It worked for most of the game. But in the early goings, they tried to attack the Bills in a certain way, and Buffalo was not having it. And by the time they realized, we can actually run the football, it was too late. They ran the clock out on themselves. So, certainly the mistakes that Josh Allen made were not mistakes that he needed to make. He didn't have to try to play hero ball. He didn't have to try to make the plays that he did. He just needed to keep it simple. And that's another lesson that I think you can learn from this game, is that in a situation where you're up like that, you're in firm control and you have the confidence to be able to close out the game no problem. Just play comfortable, play simple. Just keep everything in front of you. It's sort of like when we talk, relating this to hockey a little bit, just like, when you're on the blue line and you get the puck, it's just like for the defenseman, it's just stay calm, keep it simple with the puck. You're playing with a lead. You're not trying to create a turnover that can create a scoring chance for the other team. Just keep the puck in your own zone, keep it on your stick, just make the simple passes, and don't try to get stupid or creative or try to do too much with it. So certainly in a situation like this, it's definitely one of those things where the Bills had that game in control. I don't think for 1 second the Packers were going to be all that threatening until Josh Allen started making the turnovers and throwing the interceptions. And that's what kind of led me to kind of be a little uneasy as the game went on over time. But, in an instance like that, you learn and just keep it simple, keep everything in a nice, tight formation, keep everything just flowing for the game and just continue to chew clock and continue to control the pace of play.
Yeah, they started to beat themselves, which allowed Green Bay to hang around. And here's another thing, too, I want to point out before we run through the rest of the offense real quick. It's an adjustment to watching Buffalo win, but not in an impressive fashion. And what I mean by that is we used to be able to watch Bills games and go, okay, we're getting used to them losing. They're going to lose this game. We're getting it's understandable, and it's not a comfortable feeling, but it's a feeling we know. Where right now we don't know. Either we know the Bills losing or the Bills dominating. There's not a game we've seen in a while, aside before obviously Sunday night, where it's like the Bills should have destroyed the Packers, but they just continue to struggle to kind of get the wheels rolling. And that, to me, is kind of, like I said, that adjustment we're going to have to make, because I don't think this Bills team is going to lose a lot. But it may end up being that losses are replaced by these games that are kind of a stinker, but they still find ways to win just because this team is so good. So I think that might be a situation where you look at this and you go, okay, what can they learn from this? And again, that is a situation where I think, hey, you got to take a step back. And one thing I wanted to point out too is that, kind of jumping around here, Devin Singletary had another comfortable game, 14 carries, 67 yards, 1 reception for 2 targets. For 16 yards. Another good performance, but it felt like Buffalo went away from him in the second half, and they just continued to throw the ball. But Devin Singletary was giving them a different dimension from the offense that was allowing them to eat the clock and get the ball down the field. And he was getting chunk plays after chunk play. So it's almost like Buffalo need to not get in their own head and just continue to stick with what works. If Josh is struggling behind center, it's okay. He's allowed to have a bad game. But you have to find a way to not continue to make those same mistakes. So again, I think that the situation is, hey, look at they go out, they make a big trade, which we'll talk about later in the podcast, to make the offense a little more dynamic. There's also rumors of another signing, which again we'll talk about later in the podcast, that would make the offense even more dynamic. But for what you have right now, you have to continue with what works. Don't force it. If you're going to pass the ball, and you can't throw it away, take the sack, or take a 1 yard loss, or take a 2 yard a 2 yard gain, or whatever, or no gain on the play. You can run the ball. Don't be afraid. But again, I feel like on Sunday night it ended up being that the Green Bay Packers successfully just got into the Buffalo Bills offense's mindset and thought process and really disrupted that.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Devin Singletary and the way he's running the ball right now. He's running the ball very similar to the way he did towards the end of last season. I don't have the stat right in front of me, but I think he's averaging something like over 5 yards a carry. I mean, that's really impressive for a running back, for a guy that the Bills have had since 2019, and in the earlier stages he's struggled, but he's really starting to come along and develop into this nice back for the Bills in the back end. He's not a surefire number one sort of guy that you can rely on, constantly to run the ball, but he's becoming a nice piece where, hey, you need to change the pace up a little bit. You give the ball to him. He'll get you a few yards. You keep the ball moving down the field. And that's all about the Bills' offense. It's just keep moving the ball down the field, being a precision offense. And it doesn't necessarily have to always be in the air game. It's nice having a quarterback that can move the ball like that in Josh Allen. But at the same point, you've got guys in the backfield. Even James Cook has shown in the past couple of games he's able to hit those holes and hit, a couple of lanes to be able to gain some valuable yards to keep the ball moving down the field and chew some clock away. So certainly, it's all about trying to find that happy medium at this point. I think that a game like this may help the Bills learn that in an instance like this where you are in control of the game and the opposition really can't do anything because they can't really do much other than, trying to run the ball down the throat of the Bills defense. And even then, they had an instance there on 4th and 1. Von Miller blew up the play and they were, stopped for a turnover on downs. And, in a situation like that might be time where you just rely on your running game. You rely on just the simple things to keep moving the ball, and you just move the sticks. And even if you have a dozen third downs, you just keep going.
Yeah, and looking at it too, also just a heads up, Devin Singletary is at 4.5 yards a carry this season. His career 4.7. So he's still doing very well. But looking at the rest of the offense, Stephon Diggs, another big game, 6 receptions on 8 targets for 108 yards and a touchdown. His third consecutive 100-plus yard receiving game. Diggs is 14 games, with 100-plus receiving yards, tied for 4th most in team history with Frank Lewis and Lee Evans. And I can hear it right now. John is rejoicing as he hears these names because I know he loves a deep dive into Buffalo Bills history. 764 receiving yards this season for Stephon Diggs, the second most in franchise history through 7 games. Now get this too. The first player, Stephon Diggs, the first player in NFL history to score a touchdown in 8 consecutive games against Green Bay, passing Randy Moss, who scored in 7 straight games against the Green Bay Packers for the Minnesota Vikings. Pretty cool. Tight end Dawson Knox, two receptions on 3 targets for 10 yards and 1 touchdown. The touchdown catch gives Knox sole possession of 4th most receiving touchdowns by a tight end in team history. Knox trails Scott Chandler by 1 touchdown for 3rd most in team history. Also, one more thing to point out before we move on to the defense. Gabe Davis, 2 receptions on 7 targets for 35 yards. Usually Mr. Reliable, Davis struggled on Sunday night with holding onto the ball. A little bit of just not being able to catch the pass thrown to him. But Green Bay did make a point to put their top cornerback, Jair Alexander, on Davis, which created a headache for Davis because no doubt about it, Alexander is very talented at what he does, and he was able to break up some passes from Gabe Davis. But again, very unlike Gabe Davis to only have 2 receptions on 7 targets. But we continue to talk about finding ways to grow from this victory. There's one of them. Find a way to grow from that and learn to be a better wide receiver, be a better player, get some more, be able to get some more space from the cornerback to be able to catch those balls. But either way, the Buffalo Bills won. So again, you just have to kind of move forward. I don't want to complain too much because they won, but again, John would yell at me and say, shut up. They won. But moving over to the defense, our second of the 3 big things here. Wrapping up the defense, first off, linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, a career-high 16 total tackles and 13 solo tackles. 13 of those 16 were solo. Defensive tackle Tim Settle had 3 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 1 tackle for a loss, and 1 sack. It was his first sack as a Buffalo Bill and the first sack since 2020. Defensive end Gregory Rousseau had 1 sack, 4 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, and 1 tackle for loss. His 5 sacks this season mark a new career high. Also, linebacker Matt Milano had 5 tackles and an interception. He was all over the place on Sunday night. Now, Buffalo did struggle with the run. They had no answer at all for Green Bay running back Aaron Jones. But then again, Brayton, who does? His running style literally resembles a bowling ball rolling downhill. He had 20 carries for 143 yards. In total, Green Bay had 31 carries for 208 yards, but they held Aaron Rodgers to only 19 completions on 30 attempts for 203 yards, 2 touches, and an interception. So I guess you take what you can get. You pick your battles. You win some, you lose some, whatever cliche you can come up with. But look dude, I don't know about you, Brayton. I'm not trying to get in front of Aaron Jones when he's running downhill like he was on Sunday night.
No, and I'm not even trying to get in the way of A.J. Dillon, too, because he ran very similar to the way that Aaron Jones did, like a bowling ball going downhill. And you look at the stats, especially with the run game, and you look at the passing yards from Aaron Rodgers. Well, not like Rodgers in the past, but you look at the stats that were up against the Bills defense, and one would think, okay, this, a 27-17 game, that's a close game. Like, it should have been. The game really was never close because by the time the Packers had finally figured out that they can run the ball on the Bills, the game felt like it was already over. They had already lost the game. They were just running the clock out on themselves. So, when you look at this game, you saw how the Bills defended Aaron Rodgers right off the bat, defended the Packers. They did extremely well. And then when they started to open up the running game to Aaron Jones and to A.J. Dillon, the Bills had issues trying to stop the run. So certainly it's something going forward that the Bills are going to need to address, is to try and find better ways to stop the run, because you might have to face a guy like a Derrick Henry come the playoffs when Tennessee and the Bills potentially meet up if they do. Let's see, Jonathan Taylor obviously is a great running back. They may not face him in the playoffs, but down the road, and in the past too, Jonathan Taylor's eaten the Bills up alive. So
they're going to face Dalvin Cook in a couple of weeks.
That they are. They're going to face Dalvin Cook when the Vikings come to town. So they've got to figure out ways to better address the run. It's been actually, I mean, off the top of my head, I feel like it's actually been relatively good this year. Just maybe this past week was definitely more of a black eye or an outline just with the overall defense in general. But certainly, that game, I think other teams are going to see how they effectively ran against the Bills defense. And they're going to try and utilize that way that they did and try and use it against the Bills. So certainly it's something to clean up. But other than that, I mean, it is so hard not to watch this defense and come away just thinking every time, like, man, it's just incredible to see what they're doing as long as they're staying healthy. That's the biggest thing.
I think with the Buffalo Bills, it's going to ultimately be when they get healthy on defense, that's how they'll stop the run. Because right now, I think a lot of it's going to end up being, and we're going to talk about this later on in the podcast, health is going to be a paramount issue. Health will be paramount. Health is becoming an issue for the Buffalo Bills. But one thing I want to mention here, the defense has recorded 2 or more sacks in 7 consecutive games, marks the second longest streak to open the season in franchise history. That being said, though, want to take a quick commercial break here. Got way, way more to talk about, including the trade deadline, got an injury report, and we're going to talk about Sunday's game. So that was a very clunky way to get to it, but hey, we'll be back right after this quick break with more Trust the Podcast here on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we're back here on Trust the Podcast, our third of the 3 big things here, Brayton. Normally, when we're talking trade deadline on a Gear Network podcast, we're talking hockey. But for the first time in recent memory, I know they said it was the busiest NFL trade deadline ever, but I don't remember trades, like multiple trade happening. And there were, 18 the week of the trade deadline and like 10 or 12 on the day of the deadline. That's crazy to me. But
yeah,
Buffalo does not get caught napping on this one. They swing for the fences. They acquire running back Nyheim Hines for running back Zach Moss and a 2023 conditional 6th round pick. They got Nyheim Hines from the Indianapolis Colts. Per ESPN, Hines has 1,725 receiving yards since he entered the league in 2018, 5th most among running backs. Thad Brown of Channel 7 points out Hines lined up as a receiver, in 124 of 352 snaps in 2021. That's 35% of the time. He's a 60 catch back 2 of his first 3 seasons, and he was on pace for 62 so far this season. Per at Doug, his last name rhymes with died, so it's going to be Kaid. I'm so sorry. You spell it's Doug, Kyed. Hines' PFF receiving rate in 2020 through 2022 was 91.0. Only Christian McCaffrey was rated higher as a running back. Per at Next Gen Stats, Hines has been targeted on 29% of his routes since entering the league in 2018, the 5th highest rate, minimum 900 routes run. That's behind only New Orleans Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas at 29%, Los Angeles Chargers running back Austin Eckler, Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Devontae Adams both at 30%, and New Orleans running back Alvin Kamara at 32%. Also, Hines has averaged a career high 2.2 yards per route this season, which is third among running backs, minimum of 80 routes run. Also, per Spot Track, Hines is under contract through 2024, but there is a potential out in his contract after this season, which would incur no dead cap hit for the Buffalo Bills. Now that I got all that out, Brayton, what are your thoughts on this big deal for the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I definitely think that it's an upgrade for the offense. It's just another weapon for Allen to utilize, especially in an offense, as we've mentioned already in the podcast, that really likes to throw the ball. Hines is a great addition just because that there is the potential that he could run the ball out of the backfield. But let's be honest, the reason he was acquired is to be another weapon for Allen in the air, to be another asset for Allen to utilize in a tough situation. And quite frankly, Devin Singletary has become more of a better pass-catching back for the Bills. And James Cook has shown flashes this year of being a decent one. But certainly with the stats that you just read there, Nyheim Hines is clearly one of the best pass-catching running backs in the entire NFL. He's a guy that the ball gets thrown his way, more often than not, he's catching the ball and he's looking to get yards after the catch to help the Bills' offense. Certainly, it is an upgrade for the Bills to get an asset like that, especially when Zach Moss's time in Buffalo was essentially over. I mean, he was dressing, he was scratched, then he was dressing again, and when he was dressing, he honestly just was on the sidelines kind of wearing a hat all the time. He wasn't wearing the helmet. He didn't look like he was gearing up to go in the game at all, unless it was obviously an injury situation, which heaven forbids. The Bills running back room has been relatively healthy this year. So it's a nice addition to get Hines from Indianapolis. Obviously, we wish the best of luck to Zach Moss as he looks to kind of resurrect his career or continue to go down the path in the NFL with Indianapolis now. But to give him up in a conditional 6th-round pick, I mean, the Bills like their draft pick. They like to draft, develop, and re-sign those players. But at the same point, if you could get a player like Hines to be able to add just another dimension to the offense for a Bills team that likes to throw the ball as much as they do, why not? You take that risk, and you may have to restructure his contract going forward after this year, but it's a risk worth taking at this point.
Absolutely. And one thing that was on Twitter that I saw was Jack Miller at JackMiller02. He points out the Bills tried to sign Chase Edmonds in free agency. They tried to sign J.D. McKissick in free agency. Remember that one? They invested a 2nd-round pick in James Cook. Basically, they have been trying to acquire a pass-catching running back for a while, finally get their guy in Nyheim Hines from the Indianapolis Colts. Essentially, they drafted the guy. I saw this too. I can't remember who pointed it out, and I do apologize, but someone had pointed out that in a draft guide, James Cook's immediate comparison in the NFL was Nyheim Hines. So people are talking about, hey, what does this mean for James Cook? Well, I don't think it means a lot for James Cook. He's going to be able to learn to grow from a great pass catching running back. I think this says the world for what the Buffalo Bills are going to be doing this offseason with Devin Singletary. And I got to think that this is it for Devin Singletary with the Buffalo Bills, because Hines is at a ticket of $4 million and change this year or next year, and then $5 million and change the year after. And obviously they drafted James Cook relatively high. And as we see in the National Football League, running backs are a position that you can get for very cheap, normally on rookie deals. So again, it's a situation where the Bills are going to continue to grow with Devin Singletary, but it definitely seems like the writing is on the wall, come March or April. But we're not going to have to worry about that right now. Buffalo also makes a sneaky move here. Very sneaky, I think this will end up being. They acquire safety Dean Marlowe from the Atlanta Falcons for a 2023 7th-round pick. If you remember correctly, Marlowe played in Buffalo from 2018 to 2020, recording 2 picks and 1.5 sacks in 26 games. Also, Brayton, PFT's Mike Florio pointed out on the PFT podcast on Wednesday that Buffalo remains the highly rumored destination for free agent wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. Quote, I've continued to hear it's going to be Buffalo. It's just a matter of time. On Monday, Brandon Beane spoke to the media and said, quote, OBJ's a heck of a talent. If we did, you'd have to remember there's financials. If we did obviously try to sign him, there's financials, there's roles, there's all sorts of things that would have to line up. A guy of his talent, of course we'd look into that. So Brayton, the Odell Beckham Jr. train continues to chug along. It really does. Not only the rumors point towards Buffalo, but just the logistical hangups here look like Buffalo, because the Rams have struggled. The Packers have struggled. Maybe he would sign with Tampa Bay. They're struggling. I mean, there were rumors of him signing with the Giants, but at the end of the day, no disrespect to Danny Dimes, but if you have the opportunity to go play with Daniel Jones and the New York Giants or Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, roles might be different, but the end result might be different as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on the Odell Beckham Jr. train. The rumor mill keeps spinning up, but either way, Odell Beckham Jr. in a Buffalo Bills uniform would be the cherry on top for this season, because not only, don't you forget, I want to mention it next segment, but not only did the Bills acquire Nyheim Hines and Dean Marlowe, but remember back in the day, Brayton, when the Sabres guys would get injured, and then and then the GM would come out and say, well, so-and-so player is really good, like when Jack Eichel messed his ankle up. Well, Jack Eichel is going to come back after the trade deadline. It's like we traded for Jack Eichel. It's like, no, it's not like that at all. But that's obviously what people are going to say with Tre'Davious White, is that it's like the Bills acquired him because he's also back. So again, the rich get richer. It's crazy at one Bills drive.
It's nice. It's nice to be able to get some of these bodies back, and especially Tre'Davious White. I mean, not that the cornerback play has been bad this year. I mean, you're relying on two rookies, though, to be able to step up and take over cornerback two, reps, snaps that Dane Jackson was likely going to get this year, with Tre'Davious White being obviously your number one corner. So certainly to get Tre'Davious White back, hopefully at 100% or as close to as 100% as you could possibly get. Because let's be honest, I mean, with ACL injuries, and we kind of look at Odell Beckham with this now because he's had two ACL injuries similar to Tre'Davious White. You're never really 100% after you suffer an ACL injury. You could have the surgery, you could do the rehab correctly, you could go through all the rigors of coming back from a severe ligament tear like an ACL tear. But when you come back, it's very rare that you're ever fully 100%. I mean, if you could get Tre'Davious White back at 95%, you're still getting a damn good cornerback at the NFL level. And obviously, there are the weird instances when, these type of players come back from a ligament injury, they're even better. But it's not always the case.
Here's the thing, too. It's not often that, sorry, Brayton. It's not often that you can plug in an all-pro cornerback mid-season. But also, the presence of Tre'Davious White takes pressure off of Kyer Elam. It takes pressure off of Dane Jackson. It takes pressure off of Christian Benford, DeMar Hamlin, Jaquan Johnson. I mean, it takes pressure off Jordan Poyer too, but I mean, does Jordan Poyer need pressure taken off of him? Probably not. But again, Poyer's injured. We'll talk about that. So again, it's like, I'm sure people will test Tre'Davious White early and often to see how that knee is, to see how it's going. But it's going to be nice to see 27 back on the field, presumably Sunday against the New York Jets. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but man, it's the vibes, man. They're different. They're good in Buffalo, man. It's less, for me, I mean, at least it's less nerves and more just enjoying it, enjoying the ride, really enjoying the season the Buffalo Bills are having right now.
Yeah, it does make a difference from last year, because last year, there were expectations of Super Bowl and there were expectations that the team was good, but it almost felt different. It's like, you're trying to prove that this team is the best in the NFL. You're trying to prove your worth. And this year, I think it. I think everyone knows that the Bills are the best in the NFL. Everyone knows that nobody's going to beat the Bills, or maybe not nobody beats the Bills, but it's going to be extremely tough to beat the Bills. You're a favorite every week. And I think that's a nice thing, knowing is that the Bills are favored just about every week that they're playing, and they're winning these games, and they're proving to everybody they are the best of the best.
Well, that was the other thing, too, is that a lot of teams, I mean, if the Buffalo Bills don't go out and make big moves like they did on trade deadline day, what was it, Tuesday? I'm already forgetting what day of the week it is. If they don't go out and make those deals, everyone's like, oh my God, the season's over because the Bills aren't going to get any better. The reason that teams are out there trying to get better is so they can beat the Buffalo Bills. Because this season, the Buffalo Bills, aside from one game where they almost had the opportunity to win the game, and it was 130 degrees or whatever on the sideline, they had to run uphill both times. They had to run uphill both ways to school. It was crazy. Teams have not been able to figure the Buffalo Bills out. So they're trying to continue to add more and more and more pieces to make their teams more dynamic so they can beat the Buffalo Bills. It's just a coup. I guess maybe that's the word I'm looking for, that the Buffalo Bills are able to go and add these good players and get even better, even deeper on both sides of the ball. So I mentioned that, though, in our look ahead. Some good news, some bad news. Right tackle Spencer Brown missed Sunday night's game with an ankle injury. He was limited on Wednesday and Thursday. Presumably, again, I'm only reading the writing on the wall, just judging off of, I've paid a lot of attention to the injury report this year because it's usually been pretty full for the Buffalo Bills. So you try to pick up you try to pick up on the writing on the wall, if you will. I'm thinking that Spencer Brown will probably be questionable. If it's a questionable, if he's still not feeling great, they'll probably err on the side of caution and he won't play on Sunday, but we'll see. David Questenberry did a great job filling in for him on Sunday night. So I don't see why that wouldn't be a thought to have on Sunday against the Jets. Jordan Poyer, safety, left Sunday's game with an elbow injury. An MRI was done on Monday. He said he felt a pop in his elbow, different from his injury in training camp. Brandon Beane said he was considered day to day. There were some other reports saying week to week. Either way, we'll figure out. But he was a DNP on Wednesday, Thursday. There's no chance he's playing on Sunday. If the game was, life or death, win and you get in type of game, maybe. But there's no way he's going to be on the field on Sunday. I think the same goes for linebacker Matt Milano as well, who suffered an oblique injury. He was a DNP on Wednesday, Thursday. Normally when the DNP happens Wednesday, Thursday, they're not going to play on Sunday. I did mention, obviously, Tre'Davious White activated from the physically unable to perform list, but also removed completely from the injury report. So we are expecting him to make his season debut on Sunday. Also, cornerback Xavier Rhodes, with his hamstring injury, has been reinstated to the practice squad. Not sure if he'll be let go from the practice squad or added to the roster. I don't know. Just important to add because I know when the Buffalo Bills were decimated at cornerback, that was the big name that they brought in. Now he is once again healthy. But the big name to pop up that we're going to keep an eye on Friday, Von Miller. Vet rest day on Wednesday, but on Thursday, surprise DNP due to an ankle injury. And not that it sounds good or bad, it just would trend towards, if you're a DNP on Thursday and it's not vet rest, you're probably not playing on Sunday. So maybe the Buffalo Bills err on the side of caution. Maybe this is just hey, we're just going to sit you out and give you treatment, see how you feel. Because obviously I know that Tremaine Edmonds was on with a heel injury. He was limited, but I would presume he'll play. But again, no offense to the New York Jets, but this is not like a major game. So the Buffalo Bills can probably afford to sit a couple guys and let them get healthy, much like we saw earlier in the season. So Brayton, injuries again adding up, but the Buffalo Bills should be okay on Sunday, but we shall see. I think we lost Brayton.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm here. I apologize. With injuries, that'll be a big
Brayton muted me and then gave me the Mr. Perez response. That's a true story. I'm kidding. I'm only messing with you, Lewis. I'm only messing with you too, Lewis. It's a true story. It's a true story. Hey, let's wrap this bad boy up. Week 9, Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets, Sunday, November 6th at 1 p.m. on CBS. Buffalo, 7-3 all time against the New York Jets under head coach Sean McDermott. The last time, Brayton, both teams had a winning record when matching up was week 9 of 2011. Buffalo was 5-2. New York was 4-3. The Jets 4-1 in the last 5 games. They are coming off a 22-17 loss to New England. They lost their big stud offensive player in Breece Hall to an ACL injury. Zach Wilson's doing what he can to win the game, not doing anything crazy. Although last week he did throw for over 300 yards. That was pretty awesome to see. He still likes hot moms. That's a win in most people's book. How do you see this game playing out on Sunday? Do you think the Jets have a chance against the Buffalo Bills?
I want to say they do. I don't ever want to say that there's no team that has zero chance. I mean, even I know that the Bills blew out the Steelers a few weeks back, but even going into that game, it's hey, we don't know what Kenny Pickett is all about. We've never seen him start a game in the NFL. We saw only that little bit of a game experience he got the week before, and we were, you don't want to ever rule out a team because look at last year at this time, the Jaguars. That game, I think a lot of people had pegged oh my God, they're a disaster with Urban Meyer leading the helm, and that should be an easy win. And they lose 9-6. It was just a miserable, terrible game. And I never want to say that a team doesn't have a chance in a contest because you just never know. But, certainly the odds are against the Bills, especially with the way that they played last week against New England. I mean, Zach Wilson looks pretty lost right now. He just looks like he doesn't have the confidence. He looks like he just doesn't have, I guess the swagger is a good way to put it. But, I don't want to say that the Jets don't have a chance to win this game because I think every team does. It's just the odds are extremely against them. And obviously the Bills are just a better team. And the Jets, they had their nice little run and they lost Breece Hall, and that's a huge loss. And they go out and acquire James Robinson, but they didn't run James Robinson last week. They tried to go Michael Carter, and Michael Carter's a decent enough running back in their own mind, but it certainly is a situation where I think they do have a chance, but the chances are slim against this Bills team, which is, I think, on paper, top to bottom, much better than the Jets.
Also, another thing to point out here, Connor Hughes on Twitter points out that Robert Saleh said the Jets gave zero thought to benching Zach Wilson against the New England Patriots. He added that the Jets will stick with Wilson throughout the year for better or for worse, no matter what happens. The only thing that gets him out of the lineup will be injury. So, at on PFF_Sam on, I believe Sam Monson is how you say his name. Probably wrong because, again, I'm always wrong when it comes to names. But he points out that Zach Wilson has a passer rating of 7.1 this season under pressure and a PFF grade of 23. Also happens that the Buffalo Bills have the league's best front four. He goes on to say next week's going to be an absolute bloodbath. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case all the way, but Zach Wilson struggles with pressure, and the Buffalo Bills love to naturally get pressure. So I guess that we will we'll see how that one plays out on Sunday. But either way, I think the Bills, we might see another Bills-Packers kind of game, but I'm thinking 27-14 Bills on Sunday. They take the New York Jets, in my opinion.
And I will say, I think the offense bounces back from last week. Yes, they're going up against a decent defense in the Jets. They played really well. Sauce Gardner, is one heck of a cornerback. Early on, we're seeing that he potentially has what it takes to be as good as Darrelle Revis was when he was with the Jets, and being one of the best shutdown corners in the NFL. Regardless of that fact, I think the Bills will win this game, and I'll go a little favorable for the Bills. I'll say 34-14 is the final score.
I like it. Hey, I was going to see if John wanted to go to the game, just kind of a last minute, let's throw things together and just go to New York City and see if they get ready to go to New Jersey. I apologize. Go to the game, but it doesn't help when the Bills and Jets are both good because tickets are pretty expensive. So that got washed before I could even text John and ask him if he wanted to do it. So, John, if you're listening, I'm sorry to spoil the surprise. But as always, I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD. Brayton, thank you for joining me this week. Brayton is at Brayton J. Wilson on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, as always, we are Trust the Podcast.
And you are not.
We will catch you same time, same place next week. Myself, and I believe John will be back. He's been very busy this week. He won't be so busy next week, hopefully. So either way, with that being said, we will catch you same time, same place next week. As always, thank you for tuning in, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.